Hello friends, it's Mal with Made by Manny and Mal. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be making this glitter skyline tumbler with a beautiful alcohol ink sunset sky. I really hope that you enjoy the video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you are not already. We post new videos every single Tuesday and Saturday. Everything I'm using in this video will be linked down in the description box below, so you have everything you need to recreate this design. Don't forget to tag me in your photos if you do recreate this design, because I would love to see what you come up with. Okay, I think that's it. Let's go. We're going to be using a 20-ounce skinny straight from Craft Haven. And remember, you can use code Manny and Mal for 10% off your order at Craft Haven. I will have a link in the description box below as well. So the first step is always to prep your tumbler. So for this prep, I'm going to use a 60 grit sanding block and just sand the entire surface of my tumbler. After I've got it all sanded down, I'm going to take some 91% rubbing alcohol and just spray the entire surface of the cup and then wipe it down with a paper towel. You can also wash it with dish soap and water. Either way will work fine. You just want to get all of that sanding residue off of your cup. Then we're going to base paint our cup. I'm going to use flat white from Rustoleum. And here we go. I'm going to let this dry, and then I'm going to do my first coat of epoxy. So I've got quite a bit of a little extra ink epoxy mixed up here, and I'm going to pour about, I would say, about 20 milliliters of this epoxy into a little cup. And then I'm taking Candelabra from PDB, and I'm going to pour some of that into my smaller cup of epoxy. And this is basically going to be like a quick glitter method. So we just want to get a really light base coat of glitter on our cup. We're going to cover all of this up later, but a little bit of this glitter will end up showing through. So if you wanted to just go forward with a plain white cup and not do this glitter base, you totally can do that. I just like the little bit of extra sparkle. So I'm going to just spread all of this epoxy on my cup, and it's going to give us just a really light kind of sheen of glitter and a good epoxy base for the next steps. So I'm going to let that cure, and my cup is not totally smooth at this point, but it's okay. We're going to do a lot of epoxy throughout this process, so if your cup is not totally smooth, that is totally fine. So I'm going to show you how I created this kind of two-part stencil. I bought this SVG on Etsy, and then I just created like a double stencil, so I'll show you how I do that now. Alright, so I'm in my Silhouette studio, and I've imported the SVG that I bought, and I'm just going to take my eraser tool and just erase this Paris word. I don't need it to say Paris. And then we're going to be left just with the basic SVG. So I'm going to resize this to fit on my canvas. And I want this to fit basically the entire width of my canvas because we're going to be wrapping this around our tumbler. So up on the left-hand side, I'm going to go up to the shape drawing tool, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle around my SVG and then fill it in so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'll put that regular skyline in front, and I'm going to size them to make sure they're the same width and that the skyline fits in that box. And what we're doing is basically creating a double stencil. So I'm going to highlight them both, go up to my favorite tool, which is Divide, and we're going to be left with our regular skyline SVG, and then we're also going to have the skyline cut out of this rectangle. So if you wanted to, you could just cut out your SVG and then use the regular weeded part as your first stencil, but I wanted to cut them separately just to make sure that I wasn't going to ruin them as I weeded after I cut everything out. I'm going to cut this out of stencil vinyl. That's my favorite thing to use. I love my stencil vinyl. And we're going to use first the top part of the skyline that we sliced out of the rectangle, and then you can just set your regular skyline aside. We will use it later. So I'm just going to cut around the edges of this. It doesn't really matter to do this. I just am in the habit of doing this from all the vinyl wraps. And I'm going to position this right around the halfway spot, the top line of my vinyl hitting the halfway spot of the cup. I wanted to have a lot of room for the alcohol ink sky we're going to add later. So if you wanted the skyline to be more prominent, you can just move your vinyl up, and then your skyline will come up higher on the cup. My skyline ended up being a little bit too long for going around my whole cup, so I just trimmed off this one little building here, and then it wrapped around the cup perfectly. So here I'm just going to check and make sure that it's going to wrap around straight and meet up at the seams, and we're not going to have any overlap in buildings or anything like that. And then I'm going to apply this just how I would a normal vinyl wrap. So I'm going to peel back a little bit of the backing and then adhere one piece of the vinyl, and then just slowly work the backing away as I adhere the vinyl to the cup. Once I get to the end where the seams are going to meet, I'm going to lift up the transfer tape so I can adhere the rest of that stencil, and then we will pull back the rest of the transfer tape and be left with our perfect skyline. And like I said earlier, we want to make sure that all of the nooks and crannies and little pieces of these buildings are adhered really well to the cup so that when we go into glitter, they remain really sharp. So I just went around and pushed down all those little points with my finger. The glitter we're going to be using for the skyline is Mistress of Evil from PDB. This is a new one. It's a fine cut holographic black. I would recommend using a fine or an ultra fine cut for this project because that's going to allow your glitter to get into all those little spots of your skyline. Using a chunkier cut of glitter will just make it a little bit more difficult to get that level of detail that we're looking for. So I'm using black acrylic paint in my Designer Dries Clear glitter adhesive, and I just mixed a little bit of each of those into a medicine cup, and now I'm brushing it on to my stencil, and I'm going to do half and half. Basically, I'm going to do half of the cup, then glitter it, and then go back and do the rest of the cup. You could probably do it all at one time, but I just wanted to make sure that my adhesive didn't dry too quickly and then get kind of blotchy or spotty or anything like that. I glittered the bottom of the cup as well, just so we have one seamless line all the way through the bottom of the cup. Immediately after glittering, I'm going to remove our stencil. You want to do this really, really carefully just to make sure that you don't lift up any of your glitter. You want to do this immediately also before the glitter and the adhesive dry on your stencil, because that will definitely give you some lifting and some issues. So just make sure you do this immediately once you're done glittering. My stencil vinyl wanted to rip a little bit in certain places, so once I had the main bulk of the vinyl peeled off, I went in with my tweezers and just peeled off any of those pieces that ripped in transit. I keep wanting to say in transit. So I did use my main SVG of that skyline to kind of reference and just make sure that I wasn't looking for vinyl to pull up where there wasn't any. And once I got all of that off, I let it dry about 45 minutes, and then I went in with 2 coats of semi-gloss clear spray from Rustoleum. You can use gloss, semi-gloss, matte, whatever you have is totally fine. Once that was all dried, I went in with my first coat of epoxy. I'm taking about 20 to 25 milliliters of a little extra ink epoxy, and I'm going to just spread it on the entire surface of the cup. I would recommend sealing the white part of the cup first before you go down into the black part. I was doing it just without thinking, and I kind of sealed a piece of the black part first and then remembered, oh shoot, I should go up and do the white first. It really shouldn't matter because you did seal the glitter, but just to be safe, better safe than sorry, right? So once I've got all my epoxy on there, I'm going to let this spin and cure about 6 hours, then add another coat of about 20 milliliters, and then we'll be ready to start on our alcohol ink sky. We're going to use that second stencil that we cut out to line up with that glitter skyline just to protect it from any alcohol ink. It is black glitter, so we probably won't have too many issues with the ink kind of coloring that skyline, but I wanted to just make sure that it was protected, that it stayed true to that beautiful holographic black that we have, so I'm going to lay this stencil down. I was initially going to try and put it on there in one big piece, and then I thought, why would I do that? I can just apply kind of building by building. So that's what I did. I just cut it apart and lined up the buildings all the way around the cup. I always wear gloves when I'm using alcohol inks because inevitably I get it all over my hands, so don't forget to wear your gloves. I want to mimic this Paris sunset picture that I found on Pinterest, so I'm going to try to match my inks up with those colors, and I'm going to use a lot of different inks on this little sky, so I will have them all listed and linked down in the description box below so you have all the names of all the colors I used. First, I'm going to go in with a light yellow color. This is a Hobby Lobby yellow, And to apply these inks, I'm using just cotton pads like from the beauty supply section. And I like to use these because I get a lot of control. I can just throw one out, get a new one if the colors get contaminated or mixed up. And I don't ever really have any issues with lint or fuzz or anything like that. So if you want to use something different like a paper towel or a coffee filter, use whatever you're comfortable with to apply these inks. Once I have that bright yellow down, I'm going to go in with a little bit of a darker kind of like sunflower yellow. This one is from PDB, and I'm going to layer that right on top and just kind of start to blend these colors together. We're going to work our way up into like a dark purple, so I want to make sure that my colors are really blended and that they go seamlessly all the way up the cup. This color from PDB was like a saving grace. I ended up putting it like almost everywhere. It was a really good kind of like transition shade for all of these colors. One tip that I really like to use, or that I want to share with you, is to test your colors beforehand. You can do this on a piece of paper or cardstock or a paper towel, how I just did. I tested all of my pinks to see which pink I wanted to go with in the sky. And I ended up using this like really, really beautiful hot pink, which is also from PDB. And then I went in with a lighter pink and some of that yellow to blend the pink into the orangey part of our sky. I wanted to make sure that this didn't look super stripy or splotchy. I really wanted it to blend as seamlessly and as beautifully as possible. I'm also trying to make this look as natural as possible. So in a normal sunset, things don't perfectly fade up into the dark, like the colors don't perfectly fade. So I'm trying to keep a little bit of that like natural feel as I'm doing this. I'm not trying to blend this super perfectly so that it just looks like a painting. I hope that makes sense. After I had my pink laid down, I went in with Lotus from PDB, which is like a really pretty light purple. And this kind of started the fade into our darker nighttime colors. So when this mixed with the pink, it gave us a really pretty dark pink red kind of color, which I really liked. And then I went in with Blue Violet from Tim Holtz and put that at the very, very top rim of our cup to create our nighttime sky. And just went back and forth then with all of the colors that I used to blend them together and really get a nighttime kind of sunset color that I was happy with and that matched my little Pinterest inspiration photo. I was really proud of how well I was able to match the colors, so proud moment for me. Once I had all of the inks down and I was happy with the sunset, I went in and removed all of my stencils, and then I just took a little bit of rubbing alcohol on a cotton pad and cleaned up the bottom just in case the stencils didn't protect the entire thing. I let the alcohol inks dry overnight, did not seal them. I just went straight in with epoxy. I took about 20 milliliters of epoxy and spread that on the entire cup. Then I waited about 4 hours and went in with a second coat right over the top of that. The second coat I let cure overnight, probably I would say a little bit more than 12 hours. And once that was all cured and dry, I went in and did all of my sanding. So I took care of the rim and then just did a little bit of sanding on the body of the cup. When I first started this, I was thinking I was going to leave the sky just blank. I wasn't going to do a decal. And then after looking at it for a couple days, I thought, okay, it needs a decal. So I just created this really cute Meet Me in Paris, kind of scripty, romantic type font. And I wanted to put that kind of right off center from the Eiffel Tower. The Eiffel Tower is the highest point on the skyline. And so I didn't want to put it like right next to it or right up on it. I wanted it to kind of flow and like make sense to your eye when you're looking at it. And I made this in a thin font because I didn't want it to overpower what we already had going on. So this is a pretty delicate, thin font. However, it was really easy to weed. My Patreon members will get this file for free, and I will have it listed along with an offset that I'm not using on this cup, but it will come with the offset. It'll be listed in my digital shop on Etsy. I'm not going to measure this or try to apply it perfectly straight. The skyline is really kind of flowing and natural, and so is our sunset. So I'm just going to eyeball this and place it where I think it will look good. Full disclosure, I did have it down, and then I realized that the S in Paris like kissed the Eiffel Tower, and I didn't like that, so I took Paris off, recut it, and then reapplied it. Because this is such a thin and delicate decal, I did want to seal it before epoxy, so I'm taking matte clear spray from Rustoleum and just doing one coat on there. You can also use Quick Coat from CCDIY or polyacrylic, whatever you want to seal the vinyl in place before epoxy. After that coat dried, I went in with my final coats of epoxy. So for this one, I'm using about 20-ish milliliters of a little extra ink. I let that one cure about 4 hours and then went in with my very last coat, which was about 15 milliliters of ALE. Once that final coat cured, we were all done. I absolutely love how this cup turned out. Paris is my favorite city in the entire world, and I'm so glad that I was finally able to make a Paris-themed tumbler. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, please let me know what you thought in the comments and give the video a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure that you hit that subscribe button as well so you don't miss any of our new videos. We upload videos every single Tuesday and Saturday. If you recreate this design, which I hope you do, I hope you take this technique and run with it, tag me in your photos at MadeByMannyandMal on Instagram. I would love to see what you come up with. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I love all of you. Don't forget, be happy, smile today, and I'll see you in my next one. Okay, bye.